everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm finally doing my June wrap-up. As you know, month of June was very busy for me because at the beginning of the month I was in New York for BookCon, which obviously hindered my reading, and at the end of June I was traveling and visiting my family. So I'm even surprised that I read anything at all, but I did read something and I'm gonna talk about it. But don't worry, this video is going to be super short because basically I read only 5 books, and 3 of which were Kindle self-published indie authors Gay romance books that I tend to read when I get very stressed or just overwhelmed by life and I want to lose myself in some mindless reading. And this is what I read, and out of those 3 novels, one was more or less okay. Like, I gave it 3.54 stars because at least the relationship that was portrayed there was believable. The other 2 books were not so great. I still gave them 3 stars because at least I could read them, and I always judge a book not only by its plot but also its readability, meaning its writing style. Sometimes the writing is so bad that I cannot finish a book, but in this case I did. I'm going to provide the links to those books down below to the Goodreads pages because I don't want to talk about them too much since the plot is always predictable in those types of books. 2 people fall in love, there are some obstacles which are overcome by the end, and yeah, there is a happy ending, so really nothing to summarize or talk about. But one of those 3 novels, like I said, was slightly better than the others, and that was the one which had age gap, and I think that one was more realistic in the portrayal of relationship. But like I said, if it's your kind of thing, check out the links down below. Now onto the book which I really enjoyed this past month. That was probably one of my favorite books of 2018, and this is also the release of 2018 if I'm not mistaken, and that was the graphic novel called Be Prepared by Vera Brosgol. I kind of got an opportunity to meet Vera, kind of yes and no, meaning that when I went to TCAF, and that is Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and I was there, as you know, as part of their Zine Fest, I got to see Vera as she was signing copies of her graphic novels. I read her graphic novel, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. That was the first book I ever read by her, and it might have been even a debut novel, which was called Anya's Ghost, and that was a very cute story about a girl who came across a ghost and kind of became friends with a ghost. And I'll provide the link down below to my review. I did enjoy that graphic novel, but I also felt that there were certain plot holes. Even though I gave that book 5 stars in Goodreads, I think it was more like 4 stars. Compared to Anya's Ghost, Be Prepared is so much better. First of all, the art is better, the coloring is better, and the storyline is so much better. So Be Prepared in some ways a very autobiographical novel because the main protagonist is also called Vera, and she's also an immigrant coming from Russia, and she has some troubles fitting in American school, making friends and all of that, and that aspect was also portrayed in some ways in Anya's Ghost, but that was not the focus of the story. With Be Prepared, it is very much a focus, and I think anyone who is an immigrant or is a kid of immigrant parents would feel very connected to this protagonist. I like that story because first of all, it's very funny and it's very relatable, and Vera in this story, she goes through very good character development. It's very profound, and she grows up as a character a lot by the end of the book, which I really enjoyed. And the main plot is how Vera really wants to go to a summer camp, but instead of being sent to a summer camp like any other kid in her school to like a regular camp, she's being sent to a Russian camp. So this is where the hilarity ensues because Vera is caught between 2 worlds. On one hand, she's a Russian, on the other hand, she's not as Russian as some of the kids in that camp. So I really enjoyed that book. I just felt so much for that poor girl who got caught between 2 worlds, and she was trying so hard to fit in first in one world and then into another, and how much she changed by the end of the book. There were some aspects of the story that were absolutely hilarious, and they are I've never been to a camp myself, but I would assume this is exactly how it looks, and I just loved that book to bits. After reading that book, I somehow regretted the fact that I did not pick up my own copy and got it signed by Vera right there at TCAF, but hoping to do that next year and hoping that she will come again. This is a very cute graphic novel. It's absolutely adorable, and it's also very poignant when it comes to immigrant kids issues and fitting in and being yourself and being true to your culture, but at the same time trying to make friends. And what is important in life? Is it important to be popular and to have the cake like everybody else, or do you want to be, individual and stand out from the crowd? I really like this graphic novel. I highly recommend it, so I gave it 5 stars. I would say 4.5. There is one thing about this graphic novel. I found a typo, and when I find a typo, it just kills me. So yeah, I found a typo, and I still don't know how I feel about it, but nevertheless, this is an excellent graphic novel, so I highly recommend you check it out. And yes, in some ways it is full of tropes and cliches and stereotypes, but at the same time it's very true and also very funny. Yes, definitely recommend. And the last but definitely not least was this book, which I actually brought with myself on vacation. Yes, I brought a library book with me on vacation across the pond. Yes, I'm that kind of a crazy person. So this is book number 2 in the Royal Bastards trilogy by Andrew Schwartz. This is City of Bastards. It's the newest release. It basically came out at the beginning of June, and I snatched the library copy because I really wanted to see what's gonna happen. It's a bit difficult to summarize this book without spoilering book number 1 in the trilogy, but I just want to say that with book number 1, which is a debut novel for this author, I had a lot of problems with the character development, characterization, and world building. The plot itself, the idea was good, but there were a lot of plot holes, and I will provide the link down below to my review of book number 1, in which I talk about all the cliches and plot holes. But I just want to say that this book was slightly better, but nevertheless it felt that at some point the author felt as if he had bitten off more than he could actually chew, meaning that the way the things left off in book number 1, everyone was talking about the war and how the war is going to happen, and that was a very big thing. So by the end of the first book, this is how the things were left off. So when I went into this book, I assumed that it's gonna be very action heavy and everything is gonna be about war, but it was not. Even though the war was happening, it was happening way in the background, and even though certain things were affecting main characters and their relationship and everything that was happening with them, it was all in the background. So whatever gritty action that I expected was not really happening in this book, and it was more about the new life that the characters had in a different place. This was not what I expected whatsoever. It felt as if there was a jump in time, and yes, there was a jump in time, but not that big one. But it felt as if the characters were just plucked from one world and put into another, which I did not like. Also, there were certain things that I believe were not very well developed in this world. Some rules were changing, and as you know, as a fantasy writer, you never change the rules as you go into the world. If you set the rules at the very beginning, you have to keep to those rules. And I had a feeling as if the first book was more about the world being somewhere like medieval, not exactly Iron Age, but more medieval. But in this book, there were things and certain aspects of the world that made me believe as if it was more advanced, even though the action takes place in a different city, in a different part of this kingdom. And it makes sense that it's more developed, but it felt as if it was way more developed than the rest of the world. It was kind of weird. I don't know how I feel about this book. I was very interested in certain action, which did not happen. I was interested in certain characters that were okay. There were certain aspects that I wished would happen, and they did not. I cannot say I was very disappointed by this book or I was very happy, by this book? No. I would say it's pretty much similar to the first book. My expectations were not very high, and I gave this book the same rating. I gave it 3 stars. I think the author is getting better, but at the same time, it's not the best fantasy trilogy that you can find on YA market right now. I'm very sorry to say that. I wish it were. I think the narration style is what suffers the most in this book. The characters very often use colloquial words, and I was just getting really pissed by it because there were certain words that should not have existed in that type of society and in that language. So yeah, I would say probably world building is very weak in this book. Dialogues are funny at times, which is good because the author manages to capture the essence of teenagers, but at the same time, it very often sounds way more modern than it should be. So yeah, I mean, there are certain aspects that I did enjoy about this book, but certain aspects were just way too predictable and did not go in the direction that I hoped it would. I had a feeling as if the author decided for the second book to complicate the plot as opposed to what happened in book number 1. So usually when you have a trilogy panned out, you would try to weave certain plot lines so that they do not come as a total surprise to your reader in books 2 and 3. And here they did come as a total surprise. So yeah, I kind of enjoyed this book while I was reading it because it was such an easy read, but at the same time, I don't know, 3 stars. It's really meh. Well, that's it guys. That's all I read in the month of June, pretty much like I expected, and probably even a bit more than I expected because I thought I would just read 1 book and that's it. But I actually managed to read 5, and one of them was really good. A couple were meh, but one was really good, so I highly recommend it. For the month of July, just because I also was traveling at the very beginning of July and then I will be traveling in August, I decided to skip having a set TBR. I just want to finish reading whatever I'm reading right now, and I will check in with you later. As always, all of the links will be in the description box. Thank you so much for watching guys, and I'll see you very soon. Bye! Oops, don't fall, don't fall. I have fallen into a linguistic trap in which I pronounce Russian names with English accent, and this is not right, people. This one, which I read, be prepared. That sounded weird. I don't know why I was shaking my head in a weird manner, but whatever. Definitely my expectations were not crashed in any way. I sounded so weird. I don't know why. It feels weird filming because I missed this background so freaking much. I have a feeling as if I forgot how to talk to camera even though I did film a week ago. Or was it 2 weeks? Was it 1 week? 2 weeks. No, it was 1 week ago. Dear Lord. What is time? I have no clue.